It might be the summer break, but you might have seen videos of the Ducati riders in the MotoGP class out on a track day at the newest venue on the MotoGP calendar, and that, of course, is in Hungary, and that is Balaton Park. Now, the circuit has came under some criticism over the past year for the, how can I say, the layout of the track, the flow of the track, also considering some safety aspects as well. People saying it's not up to modern spec. But we've had a World Superbike event there. We've had MotoGP riders test at it, and they all seem to say the same thing. It's either unique, unusual, but once you get the hang of it, it's actually quite enjoyable. Now, the circuit is 2.5 miles, and it is, I think, the slowest on record. It is the slowest track on the MotoGP calendar. Average speed, I don't exactly know. It's 4.1 kilometers long, 2.5 miles, as I said. But it is going to be very interesting to see how the MotoGP bikes work up against the comparison of the Superbikes that we've just had recently at the end of July, where Toprak Razgatlioglu did a hat-trick of wins. And is it going to be the case where we look at the Superbike times and the MotoGP times being very close together, simply because the MotoGP bikes can't really use the devices, and it's going to be quite twisty of a circuit. I'm going to overlay some footage of Marc Marquez, who thankfully shared an onboard footage lap of him on a Panigale V4 during this week, and if you haven't seen it, you can watch it now while I talk. Yeah, Mark was doing a lot of laps, and it seems to be that Pecco, Mark, Alex, Aldeguer, everyone that's in the Ducati setup, they all have the same feedback. It's a really twisty circuit. I'll just give you Pecco Bagnaia's comments of what he said. He said, "Getting on the bike after holidays is always nice. My first impressions of Balaton are good. The track is small, you have to be careful in the chicanes, but I'm satisfied. The layout is unique, and we're having fun. It'll be different with the Desmos GP, but for now I'm enjoying it with the V4 Panigale, even trying to slide it." And that is something that even I heard World Supersport riders talk about, the small nature of this track. And when you think about the nature of the track, small, you think of Sachsenring. And that is the only comparable thing. But with the Sachsenring, it's fast. There's a lot of fast corners at it. But with this circuit, as you're seeing in the video, it's quite stop-start, twisty, chicanes. And if you've clocked it by now, there's a lot of left-hand corners. And I know who that's going to suit. And you're looking at the guy who it's going to suit of the onboard with Marc Marquez. And Mark's comments were interesting. He said, "A great day on track with the entire Ducati Corsa squad. I'm happy with the layout. It is unique and unusual." Now, unusual's not a bad thing. It just means it's different. I mean, the majority of the tracks that these riders go to, how could I say, they have a profile. They have a certain profile. Especially the old iconic tracks. They're fast. They're really big corners you have to take. But with the newer style track, and I think of Mandalika, even modifications, say Austria for example, a lot of these chicanes are in there. And I think, is it really needed? But if it's for safety to slow things down, I get it. But this track is going to be really unpredictable, I think, in terms of racing. I know in MotoGP that we often say the lack of overtakes because of the aero, the ride height devices. I do think this track, especially after watching World Superbike, there is opportunity to overtake, but a lot of people were overtaking at these chicanes in the last sector, and yeah, they weren't making the moves stick, and they were having to run across, and they were taking each other wide, and I think that could be a problem in MotoGP. Moto 3, I think it'll be absolute chaos, as always, but Moto 2, certainly be interested in the Moto 2 lap time in comparison with the MotoGP one. I don't know if it's going to be any closer, but yeah, the nature of this track, I'm unsure about it still, even after watching a full weekend at World Superbike. And Mark goes on to say, the faster you get into a rhythm, the better it gets, and you can really enjoy the speed. The highlight thing that he said, and it was key, he said the tarmac was good, they did a really great job. I can't wait to race here on the MotoGP bike. So it's going to be grippy. Mark's probably going to love it because, you know, left-handers control the front how he likes. But the lap times are going to be really interesting. The World Superbike lap record, if you haven't seen it or you haven't paid attention to the weekend that there was a Balaton at the end of July, like I said, Toprak Razgatlioglu, his pole position lap record was a 138.357. Now, that qualifying session was very stop-start. There was a lot of there was 2 red flags at that point, and it was a real splash and dash at the very end to get a lap in. So I think Toprak potentially could have went faster. And then the race lap record is a 139.384. Now, it's not, was it, a second faster compared to the quality times? But when you look at the lap times that we kind of got from the MotoGP track day, of course they're riding Superbikes, but they're riding slightly adjusted Superbikes. They're not riding full spec World Superbike electronics. Yeah, they might have a slip-on exhaust or a cool exhaust system put on, but the track day times are obviously slower. So I'm not going to give times that have been put on websites saying that Marc Marquez did such and such. Pecco Bagnaia is the only rider who put his time out there on his Instagram. He's put out in his caption. He did a 141.468. To me, I mean, that Superbike's pretty stock engine-wise, and it's got, like I say, trick exhaust and probably a frame or a swing arm adjustment to it. But I think that the lap times that we're seeing, they'll probably decrease for MotoGP by 3 and a bit seconds. So you're looking at 38s, 37s, potentially. I think if you get a dry weekend, the lap record will just keep tumbling every session, obviously because it's a new circuit. But the nature of the track is interesting to me. I think it just feels like we're not going to get racing. It's going to be very exciting. It feels like whoever gets out front, and you look at Marc's comments, he says that when you get into a rhythm, you can really enjoy the speed. And we've seen that in World Superbike with Toprak. Once he got into a rhythm out front, and he was hitting every apex, hitting every marker, he just disappeared. And it's the case of which bike it's going to suit MotoGP. Could it suit the Yamaha for agility? But the Yamaha has been a tendency of being quite difficult to ride in the past year or two, in terms of especially the heaviness with the aerodynamic load and how the front of the bike has worked. It's completely different to how the Yamaha used to be. And you get the riders, especially the factory boys, talking about how physical it is and how strenuous it is on their bodies for the weekend, having to muscle it around a circuit, especially with tight, twisty corners. Honda, potentially good front end on the Honda, and the lack of top speed is not going to be noticed here. Ducati, of course, have Marc Marquez, they have Pecco Bagnaia, they've got the GP24s of Alex Marquez, Franco Morbidelli, Fermin Aldeguer, and of course Fabio did Giannantonio on the 25 bike. But I think the dark horse here, I don't know why it's sticking with me. It potentially could be the Aprilia of Marco Bezzecchi, and who knows, Jorge Martin, circuit no one's been to, could turn up, and it could be a really surprising weekend. Could see the KTMs get in the mix as well. I'm really excited to see how the circuit and how it's going to play out with different bikes, but I just worry that the races might be a bit processional and might be kind of follow the leader sort of tactics, because there is so many stop-start areas, and the heavier breakers are going to really suit that. So yeah, we'll have to wait and see. Let me know what you think of Balaton. I think it's a really interesting, quirky circuit, and it's something that potentially could be on the circuit for many years. Let's wait and see. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to like, subscribe, comment, and also stick around for the podcast on Monday next week. Until then, take care.